It was an ordinary afternoon in bustling Los Angeles when fate set the stage for an extraordinary encounter. A homeless man struggling to make it through another day stumbled upon a wallet lying in the gutter. Its contents revealed a surprising owner, none other than Elon Musk, the billionaire visionary behind Tesla and SpaceX. Faced with a life-changing choice, the man hesitated, but only for a moment. Driven by a deep sense of integrity, he made the decision to return the wallet, unaware that this act of kindness would alter his life forever. What followed was an unforgettable story of compassion, transformation, and second chances, proving that even the smallest actions can ripple out to create something extraordinary. Stay tuned to discover how this selfless act captured Elon Musk's attention and led to a jaw-dropping offer that would turn one man's life completely around. Before we go into the story, please subscribe. It really means the world to me. The sun hung low in the evening sky, painting the streets of downtown Los Angeles in hues of orange and gold. Among the towering skyscrapers and bustling crowds, a man sat quietly on the edge of the sidewalk, his belongings packed neatly into a small, tattered backpack. His name was James Mitchell, a name that once meant something in his community, long before circumstances had reduced him to this fragile existence. James, now 62, had been homeless for over 3 years, surviving on odd jobs and the kindness of strangers. James wasn't the kind of man who begged or demanded. He believed in dignity, even in struggle. Every morning, he would carefully groom himself at a nearby shelter, ensuring he didn't look too disheveled. He spent his days searching for opportunities, hoping for a chance to get his life back on track. But in a world that moved too fast to notice people like him, James often felt invisible. That evening was no different. Pedestrians walked briskly by, their faces buried in their phones, their minds preoccupied with work, social obligations, or dinner plans. James sat still, his gaze fixed on the people, imagining their lives. A part of him envied their busyness, their purpose. Another part felt sorry for them. They never paused to appreciate the little things. His stomach growled, a reminder that it had been over a day since his last proper meal. The modest stash of coins in his pocket was barely enough for a sandwich, but James was resourceful. Tomorrow, he thought, as he leaned back against the cool stone wall of a closed shop, letting the sounds of the city wash over him. Across the street, a man walked out of a high-end restaurant, his confident stride and sharp suit drawing attention. He was tall, with an air of focus and intensity that made him stand out in the crowd. It was Elon Musk, the billionaire visionary known for revolutionizing industries with his groundbreaking ideas. Yet tonight, he looked far from the unshakable public persona the world knew. Elon had just come from a draining business meeting, a rare occurrence for someone who usually thrived on intellectual challenges. Something about this deal felt wrong, and for once he felt unsure. Lost in thought, he barely noticed when his wallet slipped from his jacket pocket as he crossed the street toward his car. James noticed. The flash of brown leather hitting the pavement caught his eye, and instinctively, he moved. In a world where survival often meant looking out for yourself, James was different. He'd seen wallets lost and snatched up before their owners even realized they were gone. But something about this moment felt significant. Picking up the wallet, James hesitated for a brief moment. His mind raced. He hadn't opened it yet, but he could feel its weight, the unmistakable heft of something valuable. "This could be my ticket," a small, desperate voice whispered. "Enough for food, maybe even a place to stay for a few nights." But another voice, one rooted in the values James had never let go of, spoke louder. "It's not yours, James. Do the right thing." He looked up, scanning the street. The man who dropped the wallet was already a block away, his stride purposeful. James stood, gripping the wallet tightly in his hand as he hurried to follow the man. "Excuse me, sir," he called out, his voice slightly hoarse from lack of use. Elon paused, turning toward the voice. His sharp eyes narrowed as they landed on James, taking in his worn clothes and weathered face. For a moment, Elon hesitated, his guard instinctively rising. It wasn't unusual for strangers to approach him, and not all of them had good intentions. "I think you dropped this," James said, extending the wallet. Elon's expression shifted from skepticism to surprise, then gratitude. He reached for the wallet, his hands brushing against James's for a moment. "Thank you," Elon said, his tone warm but curious. James nodded, offering a faint smile. "No problem," he said simply, starting to turn away. But Elon wasn't done. There was something about James's demeanor, his quiet humility, that caught Elon's attention. "Wait!" Elon called after him. "What's your name?" James stopped, slightly startled. "James," he replied. "Well, James," Elon said, stepping closer, "you've just done something most people wouldn't bother to do. Can I ask why?" James hesitated, unsure how to answer. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said finally. "Besides, I know what it's like to lose something important." Elon studied him for a moment, his sharp mind quickly piecing together clues about James's life. The worn shoes, the careful but modest grooming, the look in his eyes that spoke of resilience and hardship. This man had a story. "Are you in a rush?" Elon asked suddenly. James blinked, confused. "No, not really." Elon gestured toward a nearby bench. "Would you mind sitting with me for a bit? I'd like to hear more about you." James hesitated again but nodded. He wasn't sure why Elon Musk, of all people, would want to talk to him, but something in the man's tone felt genuine. As they sat, the hum of the city faded into the background, replaced by a conversation that would change the course of both their lives. The hum of the city faded into the background as Elon and James settled on the bench. Streetlights began to flicker on, casting a warm glow over their surroundings. Elon, uncharacteristically casual, leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees, his sharp eyes fixed on James. The man sitting next to him had piqued his interest, and Elon wasn't one to ignore his curiosity. For someone used to interacting with those driven by ambition and self-interest, James's quiet dignity and straightforward act of honesty were a refreshing change. "So, James," Elon began, his tone conversational yet probing, "what's your story?" James hesitated, clasping his hands together, his weathered fingers showing years of hard work and hardship. He wasn't used to being the center of attention, and certainly not for someone like Elon Musk. After a moment's pause, he met Elon's gaze with a faint, self-deprecating smile. "Where do I even start?" he said, his voice tinged with both weariness and humor. Elon gestured lightly with his hand. "Wherever feels right." James nodded, exhaling as though preparing to unburden himself. "I wasn't always here, you know," he began, motioning vaguely toward the street. "I had a life, family, a job, a future. I worked in construction most of my life. There's something satisfying about building something from nothing, seeing a foundation turn into a home or a bridge. I loved it." Elon's expression softened slightly and he nodded, encouraging James to continue. "What happened?" he asked, his voice gentle but direct. James leaned back against the bench, his gaze drifting toward the glowing windows of a nearby building. "The recession hit," he said, his voice lowering as if the memory still stung. "The company I worked for downsized, and I was one of the ones let go. It wasn't personal, just numbers on a spreadsheet. I figured I'd bounce back, find something else quickly, but it wasn't that simple." He paused, his hands fidgeting slightly. "While I was looking for work, my wife, Miriam, got sick, real sick, cancer. We didn't have insurance because I wasn't working, and the bills, they were like nothing I'd ever seen before. We tried everything, every treatment, every procedure. We spent everything we had, savings, the house, everything. But it wasn't enough. She passed away." James's voice cracked, but he pressed on. After that, it all fell apart. Without her, without a job, there wasn't much left to hold on to. I tried to get back on my feet, but it felt like the world had moved on without me. Elon was quiet, his usual quick mind taking time to process James's story. For a man accustomed to calculating risks and overcoming obstacles, the human cost of systemic failures was a sobering reminder of the fragility of life. He broke the silence with a question. "Do you have any family left?" James shook his head. "Not close ones. Miriam and I didn't have kids, and the rest of my family, well, let's just say we weren't exactly close before everything happened. After she died, it felt like I just disappeared." Elon nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. And since then? Since then, James said, his tone pragmatic, I've been surviving. Shelters when I can get in, day jobs when I can find them. It's not much, but it keeps me going. Elon leaned back slightly, folding his arms as he studied James. Do you ever think about trying to get back into construction? James let out a short, humorless laugh. All the time. But you need tools, a car, maybe even a certification these days, and all that costs money. It's like trying to climb a ladder when the first few rungs are missing. Elon's gaze lingered on James, his mind already working. He wasn't one to let potential go to waste, and something about James's resilience struck a chord with him. Have you ever thought about what you'd do if you got a fresh start? He asked. James shrugged, though there was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. I think about it every day, he admitted. But thinking and doing are two different things. Out here, just staying alive takes everything you've got. The conversation paused as a car honked in the distance, the sound echoing through the street. Elon glanced at the traffic briefly before turning back to James. You know, he said, his tone thoughtful, sometimes life gives you moments where everything can change, but you have to recognize them. I think this might be one of those moments. James raised an eyebrow, unsure what Elon was getting at. What do you mean? Elon didn't answer immediately. Instead, he leaned forward again, resting his elbows on his knees, his expression serious. I mean, you've got something rare, James. Honesty, integrity. Most people would have taken that wallet and run, but you didn't. You didn't even hesitate. That tells me a lot about who you are. James looked down, his weathered face showing a mix of humility and skepticism. I just did what anyone should do, he said quietly. Doesn't feel like much. Elon smiled faintly, shaking his head. It's more than you think. Most people would have kept walking. You didn't. And I think that deserves something. Before James could respond, Elon reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a sleek business card. He held it out to James, who hesitated before taking it. What's this? James asked, studying the card. It was simple but elegant, with Elon's name and contact information embossed in silver. It's a chance, Elon said, standing up. I don't believe in coincidences, James. There's a reason you and I crossed paths tonight. If you're ready to take a step toward something better, call that number tomorrow. We'll figure it out from there. James stared at the card, the weight of the moment sinking in. You're serious? He asked, looking up at Elon. Dead serious, Elon replied, his tone firm. The world needs more people like you, James. People who do the right thing, even when it's hard. I'm not saying it'll be easy, but I think you're ready for a fresh start. James didn't know what to say. For the first time in years, he felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. I'll call, he said finally, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Thank you. Elon nodded, offering a small smile. Thank you, James, for reminding me that there are still good people in the world. As Elon walked away, James sat on the bench, the card clutched tightly in his hand. The streetlights seemed brighter somehow, the noise of the city less harsh. For the first time in years, tomorrow didn't feel so far away. James sat on the bench long after Elon had walked away, the sleek business card still clutched in his hand. The weight of its potential was almost overwhelming. He stared at the embossed letters spelling out Elon Musk, feeling as if the card itself was a tangible lifeline, a single thread connecting his present struggles to an unseen future. For years, James had operated in survival mode, focused only on making it through the day. But tonight, something was different. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the possibility of something more began to take root. I can't mess this up, he muttered under his breath. He tucked the card carefully into his pocket, his fingers brushing against the few coins he had left. His stomach growled, reminding him that his immediate needs were still pressing. But the thought of what the card represented filled him with a strange sense of fullness, one that pushed his hunger to the back of his mind. The night passed slowly. James returned to the shelter where he usually stayed, finding his usual corner among the rows of worn mattresses. Sleep eluded him as his mind raced with questions. What exactly did Elon Musk mean by a chance? Was this some sort of test? Or a cruel joke? He turned over on the thin mattress, staring at the dim ceiling. Whatever it was, he couldn't afford to let doubt stop him. The next morning, James was up early, following his routine as best he could. He cleaned up at the shelter's restroom, taking extra care to smooth his shirt and comb his hair. The reflection staring back at him in the cracked mirror was tired, but determined. Today felt like the first day of something new, and he wanted to meet it with as much dignity as he could muster. He walked to a nearby coffee shop, one of the few places where he could sit undisturbed for a while. With his last bit of change, he bought a small black coffee and settled into a corner booth. Taking out the business card, he stared at it for what felt like an eternity before finally pulling out his phone, a second-hand model he'd saved for months to buy. His fingers hovered over the screen as he dialed the number. The line rang twice before a calm, professional voice answered. "Tesla Executive Office. How may I direct your call?" James's throat felt dry. He cleared it quickly. Yes. My name's James Mitchell. Elon Musk gave me this number last night. He said to call." There was a brief pause, during which James's heart pounded loudly in his ears. Then the voice returned, friendlier now. "One moment, Mr. Mitchell. I'll connect you." James's mind raced as the line clicked. Within seconds, another voice answered, this one instantly recognizable. "James," Elon said, his tone warm and welcoming. "I'm glad you called." James gripped the phone tighter. "I wasn't sure if you were serious," he admitted, his voice carrying a mix of nervousness and hope. Elon chuckled softly. "I don't joke about things like this. Do you have time to meet me today? I'd like to show you something." James hesitated for only a second. "Yeah, I can do that." "Great," Elon replied, quickly giving him an address. "I'll have someone meet you at the entrance. See you soon." As the call ended, James stared at the phone, the reality of the situation sinking in. He downed the last of his coffee, stood up, and began walking. The address was several miles away, but James didn't mind. The walk gave him time to steady his thoughts and prepare himself for whatever lay ahead. When he arrived, James was taken aback by the building in front of him. It was sleek and modern, its glass facade reflecting the morning sunlight. The Tesla logo stood prominently at the entrance. For a moment he felt out of place, his worn clothes and modest demeanor clashing with the polished exterior. But before doubt could creep in, a young woman approached him with a warm smile. "Mr. Mitchell?" she asked. James nodded, trying to match her professionalism. "Right this way," she said, gesturing for him to follow. The inside of the building was even more impressive than the outside. James took in the open spaces, the hum of technology, and the purposeful energy of the people around him. The young woman led him to a private office where Elon was waiting. Dressed casually but still exuding his usual confidence, Elon stood and extended his hand as James entered. "James, good to see you," he said, shaking his hand firmly. "Good to see you too," James replied, his nerves slightly easing at Elon's approachable demeanor. Elon gestured to a chair. "Have a seat. I want to talk to you about something." James sat down, his posture straight, as Elon took a seat across from him. "You know," Elon began, "what you did last night wasn't just about returning a wallet. It was about integrity, doing the right thing even when no one's watching. That's rare, James, and it's exactly the kind of quality I value in the people I work with." James blinked, unsure of where this was going. "I appreciate that," he said, his voice quiet. Elon leaned forward slightly. "I believe in second chances, James. I've made plenty of mistakes in my life, but what's always mattered is how I move forward. You've been through a lot, but I see someone who's ready to move forward too, so here's the deal. I want to offer you a position at Tesla." James's eyes widened. "A position?" he repeated, almost not believing his ears. Elon nodded. "We'll start with something simple. Maintenance, facilities work, whatever fits your skills. You'll have a steady income, benefits, and the chance to grow. From there, it's up to you how far you want to take it. James's mind raced. This was more than he had dared to hope for. Why me? He asked finally, his voice trembling slightly. Because you've earned it, Elon said simply. Not with credentials or connections, but with character. And that's something you can't fake. For the first time in years, James felt a lump in his throat that wasn't from sadness or frustration. It was hope, raw and powerful. He took a deep breath, nodding slowly. Thank you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I won't let you down. Elon smiled, standing up. I know you won't. Let's get started. As James left the office, a sense of purpose filled him. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, he felt like he was walking towards something rather than away from it. James stood just inside the towering glass doors of Tesla's headquarters, his eyes darting from one sleek fixture to another. The lobby was a marvel of modern architecture, polished floors reflecting geometric light fixtures above, while walls of glass provided an uninterrupted view of the bustling tech campus outside. Employees moved purposefully through the space, their ID badges glinting in the light as they passed. James adjusted the strap of his tattered backpack, feeling distinctly out of place in his patched gray hoodie and faded blue jeans. His worn sneakers squeaked faintly against the immaculate floors, a subtle reminder of how different his world had been up until now. But as much as he felt out of his depth, he was determined to take this opportunity and make it count. Mr. Mitchell? A warm, friendly voice broke through his thoughts. James turned to see a young woman with a welcoming smile, dressed in a sharp business casual outfit. She extended her hand. I'm Clara, part of the onboarding team. Welcome to Tesla. James shook her hand, his grip firm despite his nerves. Thank you. It's good to be here, he replied, his voice steady but quiet. Let me show you around and get you settled, Clara said, motioning for him to follow. As they walked, James absorbed everything, the open floor plan, the hum of high-tech machinery, and the vibrant energy of employees collaborating in sleek conference rooms. He noticed that the culture was as polished as the building itself, yet there was a subtle warmth in the way people greeted each other, in the way innovation seemed to pulse through the air. They arrived at a small office where a man in a casual button-down shirt greeted James with a firm handshake. Welcome aboard, James. I'm Eric, head of facilities management. I'll be your supervisor as you get started. James nodded. I appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Eric. Just Eric is fine, the man replied with a smile. You're part of the team now. Let's get you started. Eric led James to a supply room filled with various tools and equipment. Your role will involve maintenance and facilities work, keeping things running smoothly around here. Nothing too fancy at first, but it's important work, and I know you've got the skills for it. James's confidence grew as he listened. This was familiar territory. Tools, problem-solving, working with his hands. It felt like a bridge back to the person he used to be, the man who built homes and crafted solutions. Eric handed him a uniform, dark gray coveralls with the Tesla logo embroidered neatly on the chest. This is for you. There's a locker in the employee area where you can keep your stuff. Once you're ready, I'll show you your first task. James took the uniform, running his fingers over the clean fabric. It felt like more than just clothing. It felt like a fresh start. In the employee locker room, James changed into the uniform, neatly folding his old hoodie and jeans into his backpack. As he buttoned up the coveralls, he caught his reflection in a full-length mirror. For the first time in years, he felt like he belonged somewhere, like he was part of something bigger. His first task was repairing a small mechanical issue in one of the conference rooms. Eric walked him through the basics, ensuring James had the right tools and understood the job. As James worked, his hands moving with practiced precision, he felt a sense of calm and focus that had been missing from his life for so long. Looks like you've done this before, Eric said, watching as James tightened a bolt and tested the repaired mechanism. Construction work, James replied simply. A lot of the same principles. Well, it's good to have someone with experience, Eric said. "Keep this up, and I can see you moving up the ranks here." James smiled faintly, not used to receiving praise. "I'll do my best." Throughout the day, James tackled various tasks, replacing light fixtures, organizing tools, and even helping with a minor plumbing issue in the break room. With each completed task, he felt a growing sense of purpose. The employees he interacted with were polite and occasionally curious, offering quick thanks or friendly smiles. During lunch, James found a quiet corner in the cafeteria, unsure if he should join anyone. The room buzzed with conversations, laughter, and the clinking of utensils against plates. Just as he began to eat, Eric appeared and sat down across from him. "How's the first day going?" Eric asked. James nodded, swallowing a bite of his sandwich. "It's good, better than I expected." Eric chuckled. "You're doing great. Keep it up, and I think you'll surprise yourself." As the day wound down, James found himself in a reflective mood. Standing outside the building, watching the setting sun cast a golden glow over the campus, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. He clutched the small ID badge clipped to his chest, a symbol of the opportunity he had been given, and the promise he had made to himself to make the most of it. For the first time, the future didn't seem so uncertain. James had just finished organizing a cluttered tool cabinet when he heard footsteps approaching. Turning around, he was surprised to see Elon Musk himself walking toward him. Dressed casually in a crisp white shirt and dark jeans, Elon carried his usual air of focus and intensity, but there was a warmth in his expression that immediately put James at ease. "Elon," James said, straightening up instinctively, "I didn't expect to see you here." Elon smiled faintly. "I like to check in on things personally every now and then. Besides, I wanted to see how your first day's going." James wiped his hands on a cloth, thinking for a moment. It's going well. Better than I thought, honestly." Elon nodded, his sharp eyes scanning the tools and equipment neatly arranged in the cabinet James had been working on. "Eric's been singing your praises," he said, leaning casually against the workbench. "Says you've got a knack for this kind of work." James smiled modestly, looking down. "It feels good to be doing something again, something that matters." Elon's gaze softened. "James, everything you do matters. The way I see it, small tasks build the foundation for big changes. And trust me, we wouldn't function without people like you." James blinked, taken aback by the sincerity in Elon's tone. For a man who had launched rockets and revolutionized industries, his acknowledgement of the value in simple, honest work was unexpected and deeply appreciated. Elon gestured toward a nearby bench and sat down, motioning for James to join him. "I've been thinking about your story," he said once they were seated, "about how easily life can knock someone off course no matter how hard they work, and honestly, it pisses me off." James chuckled softly, though he could tell Elon wasn't joking. "It's just the way things are," he said. "It doesn't mean it has to stay that way," Elon replied firmly. "People like you, hardworking, honest, you shouldn't have to struggle just to survive. There's so much wasted potential out there, and I want to change that." James frowned slightly, unsure where this was going. "What do you mean?" Elon leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I've been thinking about creating a program. Something that gives people like you, people who've been overlooked, a real chance to rebuild. It could be skills training, mentorship, whatever's needed to help someone get back on their feet." James stared at him, momentarily speechless. "That sounds incredible," he said finally. "But why me? Why talk to me about it?" Elon smiled faintly. "Because you're exactly the kind of person I want this program to help. You've shown resilience, integrity, and a willingness to work hard. If we can replicate that, give others the same chance, imagine the impact we could make." James nodded slowly, the weight of Elon's words sinking in. "It sounds like a big undertaking." "Most worthwhile things are," Elon said with a shrug. "But I've got a good feeling about it, and about you." For a moment they sat in comfortable silence, the hum of the building's machinery filling the air. James felt a surge of gratitude, not just for the opportunity he'd been given, but for the sense of purpose it was starting to bring back into his life. You know, Elon said, breaking the silence, this is just the beginning. I see a lot of potential in you, James. More than just fixing things around here. James tilted his head, curiosity flickering in his eyes. What do you mean? Elon smiled, standing up and extending his hand. Let's just say I think you're capable of more than you realize, and I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. James shook his hand firmly, a renewed sense of determination coursing through him. I won't let you down, he said quietly. I know you won't, Elon replied, his confidence in James unwavering. As Elon walked away, James felt a swell of pride. For the first time in years, someone believed in him, not just as a worker, but as a person with potential. It was a feeling he would carry with him as he continued to build a new life, one step at a time. The warm morning sun filtered through the windows of James Mitchell's modest apartment, casting soft rays across the neatly arranged furniture. The apartment wasn't extravagant, but it was his, a space filled with reminders of how far he'd come. On the small wooden dining table sat a framed photo of Miriam, his late wife. James paused as he buttoned his crisp blue shirt, picking up the photo and holding it for a moment. I hope you're proud, he said quietly, a bittersweet smile crossing his face. Miriam's memory had been his guiding light during the darkest times, and now, as he prepared for an important day, he felt her presence more than ever. Today was a milestone, one that felt almost surreal after years of struggle. James glanced at the clock. It was time to leave. He grabbed his laptop bag and a small notebook he used for jotting down ideas, a habit he had picked up during his time at Tesla. His transformation from a man barely surviving on the streets to someone contributing meaningfully to one of the world's most innovative companies was nothing short of remarkable. But James never saw it as just his victory. It was a testament to the power of second chances. Walking into Tesla's headquarters, James felt a familiar mix of awe and gratitude. The building's sleek design and bustling energy were no longer intimidating. Instead, they represented opportunity and purpose. James was no longer the hesitant man clutching a business card. He was now a valued member of the team. Over the past year, James had worked his way up from maintenance to a role in facilities management, where his organizational skills and dedication had caught the attention of his supervisors. Elon Musk himself had taken note of James's reliability and knack for problem-solving, offering him a chance to participate in a project aimed at improving workplace efficiency. The project had been a success, leading to James's promotion to team lead for sustainability initiatives within the company. His role involved managing a group of employees tasked with implementing eco-friendly practices across Tesla's facilities, a responsibility that combined his practical skills with his growing passion for making a difference. Today, James was scheduled to present the results of their latest initiative to a panel of executives, including Elon. The presentation was the culmination of months of hard work, and though James felt a twinge of nervousness, it was outweighed by pride in his team's accomplishments. As he entered the meeting room, his colleagues greeted him warmly, their respect for James evident in their smiles and gestures. Elon arrived shortly after, offering James an encouraging nod as he took a seat at the head of the table. James stood confidently at the front of the room, his slides ready. Good morning, he began, his voice steady. Today, I want to share how our sustainability program has reduced energy consumption across Tesla's facilities by 20% in just 6 months. This wouldn't have been possible without the incredible work of my team. As James detailed the project's impact, from cost savings to environmental benefits, the room's atmosphere shifted from professional interest to genuine admiration. Elon's expression was one of approval, a rare but meaningful acknowledgement from a man known for his exacting standards. When James finished, the room erupted in applause. Elon stood, offering a handshake. James, this is impressive work. You've not only met expectations but exceeded them. Well done. James's chest swelled with pride as he returned to his seat. Moments like this reminded him why he had fought so hard to rebuild his life. Despite his success, James never forgot where he had come from. On weekends, he often visited the homeless shelter where he had once slept on a worn mattress. The staff greeted him warmly, treating him as an old friend rather than a former resident. James had started volunteering at the shelter, organizing workshops on basic job skills and interviewing techniques. He shared his story with the attendees, hoping to inspire them to keep pushing forward, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. During one such session, James noticed a young man named Carlos sitting quietly in the back. Carlos reminded James of himself, reserved, uncertain, but with a spark of determination in his eyes. After the workshop, James approached him. "Hey, Carlos, right?" James said, extending a hand. Carlos nodded, shaking James's hand tentatively. "You've got potential," James said with a smile. "What's holding you back?" Carlos hesitated before replying, I just don't know where to start." James nodded knowingly. "I've been there. Let me help you. Sometimes the first step is the hardest, but it's also the most important." Over the next few weeks, James mentored Carlos, helping him build a resume and practice interviews. When Carlos landed a job, his gratitude was evident, but James waved it off. "Just pay it forward when you can," he said. Months later, Tesla hosted its annual employee appreciation event. The Grand Hall was filled with employees from all departments, celebrating their collective achievements. Toward the end of the evening, Elon took the stage to deliver a speech. "Tonight," Elon began, "we're here to honor the incredible work done by our team. But there's one individual whose journey embodies the values Tesla stands for: resilience, innovation, and integrity." The room grew quiet as Elon continued. James Mitchell's story is one of transformation and inspiration. He came to us under challenging circumstances, but through hard work and an unwavering commitment to doing what's right, he's become an integral part of our team. James's colleagues erupted into applause as Elon gestured for him to join him on stage. James stood, his heart pounding, and made his way to the front of the room. Elon extended a hand, then surprised James by pulling him into a brief but heartfelt hug. "James," Elon said, addressing the room, "reminds us that talent and character come from all walks of life. It's up to us to recognize it and give it the chance to shine." James's voice trembled slightly as he addressed the crowd. "Thank you," he said. "I wouldn't be here without the opportunities Tesla has given me, and I'll keep working to prove that second chances are worth it. For everyone who's struggling, don't give up. The next chapter of your story could be the one that changes everything." One evening, James found himself walking near the bench where he had first met Elon Musk. The memory felt distant yet vivid, a pivotal moment that had set everything in motion. He sat down, letting the city's hum fill the silence. As he reflected, he noticed a young man rummaging through a nearby trash can. James felt a pang of recognition. The man's weary posture and cautious movements reminded him of himself not so long ago. Standing up, James approached him. "Hey," he said gently, "you okay?" The man looked up, startled, but not hostile. "Yeah, just trying to get by," he mumbled. James reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, one that bore his name and title at Tesla. "I've been there," he said. "If you're ready for a fresh start, call me. Let's see what we can do." The man hesitated before taking the card, his expression a mixture of confusion and hope. "Thanks," he said quietly. James nodded, smiling. "Don't mention it. Just remember, things can get better." As James walked away, the city lights seemed to shine a little brighter. His journey had come full circle, but he knew it was far from over. The lessons he had learned and the kindness he had received were now tools he could use to lift others. And for James, that was the true measure of success.